It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
Let's start talking about folks at the beginning of their careers, in the early stages, probably the ones that are most dialed into the influencers, into the Instagrammers, into the TikTokers. What do the actual top 1% of folks in their 20s look like? Well, if you look at the average income, if you want to be considered in your 20s in the top 1%, you need to have an income of at least $160,000 in 2023.
I was actually surprised. That's pretty high. I know we have quite a few people that come in to our Q&A shows that they actually resemble this, but still, based upon my own life experience, it takes a lot to make six figures in your 20s. And if you look at the net worth of the top 1%, this was actually median net worth. If you looked at this, it was $577,000.
So that's pretty remarkable. And most of us can think back to our 20s, thinking about having an income at that realm, or more specifically, a net worth at that realm. That's unique. That is not the common part. That is not the outlier. Dare I say, 99% of folks do not fall into this category. That's why it's the top 1%. But that is, in fact, where the numbers are.
I'm amazed to see this level of net worth already so early. Means you must have figured something out, whether it's to have a good income, to already have net worth. It means you're probably living on less than you make, or you have good deferred gratification skills. There's something there that is making this possible.
Yeah, these folks have likely figured out that the earlier I can understand how powerful discipline can be, the earlier I can figure out if I'm willing to sacrifice a few of my dollars today for something better in the future, the better off I will be. So we would argue that folks in their 20s that have been able to achieve either this level of income or this level of net worth have likely made some sacrifices to get there. They understand that deferring gratification in the future can be a winning proposition.
I also think it's important they understand the value of time. I mean, what do we try to have resources for? I mean, in addition to funding goals, it's also so your money can work for you.
Right.
And time is money, and also money is you own your life, which is AKA you own your time. That's not something to be wasted.
And if you want to see just how powerful time can be for you, go out to our website, moneyguy.com/resources, and we have this deliverable that we call the Wealth Multiplier for Young Savers. And basically it shows what every dollar can turn into for you by the time you retire, starting at age 0. So someone who starts at 0, what their wealth multiplier can be, or someone who's age 20, what their dollar can turn into, or someone who's 30, what their dollar can turn into. Well, you can see when you look at the numbers on this deliverable that the earlier you start, the more time you have for your money to work, the more powerful it can be for you.
So, Bo, let's talk about the hacks they've used to kind of fuel this success. And this is something we had a lot of discussion about in our show prep. Is you're like, okay, look, to have this level of net worth, you either inherited it or you have to have a tremendously high income or created something where you had some big windfall that's come your way. But I think let's give people the kudos though. If you are somebody even with the high income, to actually turn this into net worth, if you created this from 0, you have to be living on a lot less than you make, meaning that you have low living expenses relative to your income, maybe even doing house hacking. We all know we've covered content that Graham has done. Graham for a while was, totally house hacking while he built his real estate empire. There's unique things that go on to create this early success.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. If you go watch some of Alex Hormozi stuff, he talks about how early on in his career, even though he was making incomes of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, he had figured out how to get his living expenses down to $1,500 a month. He was living in a single room with 4 or 5 other roommates that were also renting. There are ways to do that. But frankly, being in the top 1% in your 20s is not an easy thing. It's not something that is commonly available to the majority of folks out there.
Well, and I want to, because look, a lot of us, we're going to see this, and I always want everything we do to be motivating. I want you to actually feel like, hey, these guys are breaking it down. They're actually showing the details, but they're also giving me a path towards my own success. Being confessional, I didn't resemble this in my 20s. I took some big risk in my late 20s after my father passed away, but I had some goals of like hitting $100,000 by the time I was 30. I didn't reach it on the income goal. I definitely didn't have this level of net worth that we've just covered here, because yes, I took risk. I took some necessary steps in my 20s, but not enough time had passed for this to actually fulfill. And I think that's where a lot of you, even if you are financial mutants and you're going to be tremendously successful, do not get discouraged if all of the success does not manifest in the 20s. That's what is portrayed out there on some of these shows, but that's not the reality, so hang in there.
And what I think is so interesting is as we move through these ages, as we move through these decades, we're going to talk about how attainable some of these top 1% numbers are. It's difficult in the 20s. Even if you are someone who hits that level of income and you have $160, $180, $200, $250,000 of income coming in because of exactly what Brian said, you might have not had enough time to get to that net worth level. However, just because you're not in the top 1% in your 20s does not mean that being in the top 1% in your 30s is something that will evade you.